what comes afterwards is so hard. The editing and being criticized for how you've written something and then rehashing it and going backwards and forwards and formatting. How do you want it? Oh, it was a minefield. I knew nothing. I'd never done anything like this before. So it was a learning process for me, fun, but also very daunting, very daunting.
Welcome to a new episode of Most Memorable Journeys. I have a very special guest today, a very good friend who I have known for many years. And when I met her, I did not know all the things she does or she used to do behind people's backs. But it's all going to come out. Well, it all came out a long time ago, but there's going to be more here on this podcast episode. She is an author. She wrote 7 books. And she is so much more than that. She does a lot of stuff, and we're going to find it all out. Welcome to Most Memorable Journeys, Maria Athanasiou.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me.
I was looking at, you know why I was struggling now with saying Anna Maria? Because it says George Athanasiou.
Yeah, I'm using his account. He used my,
I
he used
have
my
known
laptop.
you for so long, and I have known your name for so long. But you see that the brain goes its own way. So, my friend Anna Maria, I have to say something else. I was gonna say it during the introduction, but I will. If you travel with Anna Maria, which I have done, you are in for a treat because a few minutes after takeoff, she puts down the tray table and puts out the buffet. So, do you always do that, Anna Maria?
Yes, I do. I think it's ingrained in me from being very young. Always have to have some food in the bag. And then, of course, when the children were born and travel with the children, had permanent snacks in the bag. And it stuck with me because, sometimes things happen on flights and you don't have food, as you and I well know.
That is very true. And you have 2 boys. They are more hungry generally. So they were probably always hungry. So it goes back to that. So you have to have, that's a travel tip here. Just number 1 travel tip. You always have to have snacks in your bag.
Definitely have
Why?
snacks.
Because you and I were flying back from London, and what happened?
Well, we got on the plane and everything was hunky dory. And then they told us because of frost, there was a delay with the flights. So we ended up sitting on a flight for 4 hours on the runway while we queued up to set off. And then we had another 4.5 hours flight back. So we had 8.5 hours together in confined space.
And we had snacks.
And we had fun.
We had lots of fun.
We did.
Let's talk about what you do. And when I was saying before that I used to sit next to you and I didn't know what you were doing, you started writing, but you did not tell anybody about your writing, did you?
That's correct. I wrote in secret. To be fair, I've always been writing stories in my head from quite a young age. But, those were, I want to be a princess. I want to be a rock star. And as they got older, they got a little bit more complicated. And most of my inspiration for my stories comes from maybe someone might say something and it will spark something, or a song, or I hear a story that happened to somebody's friend, and that starts the catalyst. So, yes, I'm always observing and always writing things down, but not telling anybody.
I wonder how many things you've written down about me. There's never
Now that would be telling.
Listen, but you also have to tell to people who are listening that, well, first of all, I have permission to talk about Marios. I asked you. Your husband passed away exactly a year ago, but he didn't know either that you were writing, and he
He didn't.
he was suspicious at some point, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. At the time, he was working evenings. And so I had my evenings to myself. And I used to write at my computer for hours sitting on a night. And as soon as he would walk through the door after work, I would literally close my laptop down and sort of pretend that nothing's happening. And then in the morning, I would start writing. And then he would, because he had a late night, he'd wake up a bit later than me. As soon as he walked down the stairs, I'd close my laptop. And so this happened for quite a while until he sort of, well, I'd actually at this point written quite a lot of my book. And he, in a roundabout way, kept saying to me, why do you keep writing? Why do you keep closing your laptop? And I was like, oh, it's nothing. It's nothing. Until he literally asked me straight, he thought I was having an affair. So I then had to fess up and say, actually, no, I'm writing a book and I've nearly finished it. And this had been going on for 14 months at this point. Obviously, he hadn't caught on until as I got more and more into it, I was doing more and more writing. So he saw more and more of that. So I ended up having to fess up for that reason because he suspected. So I was kind of cheating on him with my fantasy world, as it were.
Allowed. That's allowed. I think they say that's allowed. But when you told him that you are writing a book, because he had you spoken about it before? Had you ever met? Never. So what did
never.
What did he say?
He just looked at me totally blank and went, sorry, you've written a book? And I said, yeah, it's about 900 pages. And he was like, what? When did you manage this? And what's it about? And am I in it? You know, it was those questions. And I explained to him it wasn't our story before he panicked. I said it was a total fantasy. And I had to sit down and sort of give him a quick synopsis because he wasn't really into reading books. He was more, he preferred to visually see things rather than read it. And he was chuffed to bits. He really was. And he kept saying to me, well, what are you going to do about it? And I said, I have no idea. And
so that's where you were at this point. You had a book,
yeah.
It was nearly finished, and you had just used your fantasy, but you didn't really know what to do. And I think there is lots of people who are listening to this who are in the same situation, who actually may have, because they say there's a book in each and every one of us. And so some people may have brought it out already, some may have not. Those who have, when you get to this point where you have finished the book, but you don't know what to do, what actually do you do, or what did you do?
Well, because mine was it's fiction, and fiction is different to like an autobiographical or even a factual or self-help like you did. So I needed to know if it read well, firstly, because I when I write very similar to how I speak. It's very an easy read, I would say, and contemporary. So the first thing, and it was actually my brother's idea, which, you know, he was the next person I spoke to about my book. He suggested I send chapters to people that I knew, family, friends, and ask them to be brutally honest. I just sent them 3 chapters and asked them to be totally honest with me and ask if it was any good. Previous to that, I had sent a couple of chapters off to a couple of friends and to my mother, who's my number one critic. And I wanted to see what they thought. I thought that's the best sort of yardstick to see. I have to say, my mom, when I sent it to her, she's a quick reader, thank goodness. And she sat and read about 10 chapters. And I had a Skype call with her and I asked her, okay, what did you think? Her response was, well, I actually don't know how to say this. And I thought, oh, dear me, she does not like this book. And my mum's pretty, you know, brutal. She's not going to sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for her to tell me that. And she said to me, to be honest, I didn't think you'd be able to do it. And once I started reading it, I forgot it was you that wrote it and thought it was a book that I bought. So it was kind of like a backhanded compliment. So, I ended up giving it out to a few people and they all came back in a positive way. So I thought, okay, so it reads well. And then, believe it or not, I asked those people to then pass it on to people that didn't know me and did the same thing. And they also came back and said that they loved it as well. So then my brother said, okay, then, so that means we've got something that's worth putting out there. And just to put you in the picture, my brother hasn't read a book since he left school. He knows nothing about publishing. he, it was a
He'll be
completely.
listening. He'll be listening to
I
this.
know he will, and he'll be nodding, going, "Yeah, this is
Okay.
true."
All right.
But what my brother is brilliant at is research. So, and when you give him something, he's like a dog with a bone. He's decided to cold call publishers, which is unheard of, as you well know. You just don't do that thing. You have to go through an agent. You have to have channels, and it's a very old boys' school. It's very closed. But he did. He just rang people up, and a few of them said no chance. She has to be this, she has to be that. But he persevered, and I got three publishers that wanted to read my manuscript. So I sent section. Well, they actually said just send us 2 chapters and a synopsis. So because we'd already thrown caution to the wind, I ended up sending them 10 chapters and a synopsis, and sat back and waited and waited and waited.
Worst
And
part.
it is absolute. I'm a very patient person, but it absolutely broke me, to be fair. And I almost forgot about it until I got a big fat envelope arrive at my house on May the 8th. I remember it, May the 8th, very specifically. And it was a contract for a 2-book deal from a publisher in London. And then the next day, I got another contract sent from the other publisher. And a week after that, I got another one. And I was blown away, to be honest. But then the biggest, and what people don't realize when you write a book, and especially fiction book, which even though it's not my story, there's a lot of me in there. I realized if it gets published, people are going to read it. I know that sounds crazy,
It's
but
true.
honestly,
Yes.
that's all I could. I just thought people I don't know are going to read it, and people I know are going to read it, and I didn't know which was worse. Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
exposing, giving out your work.
Yeah.
So then,
It is. But I think it's just this initial, because I mean that was one book, and but when you got this contract and it was for 2 books, you knew that you would have to write another one. Were you ready
no,
to?
what happened was because I already explained to them that it was 900 pages, my manuscript, and
Yeah.
there's no book well, no, there are books that big. But in the commercial world, it doesn't work that way. So I knew it had to be split into 2 books. So they said you would have a 2-book deal, but you need to rehash it a little bit. So I had to redo the central part so that it would work into 2 books. So that's what I did. And everybody thinks writing a book is a hard bit. As you well know, that's probably the easiest part. What comes afterwards is so hard, the editing and being criticized for how you've written something, and then rehashing it and going backwards and forwards and formatting. How do you want it? Oh, it was a minefield. I knew nothing. I'd never done anything like this before. So it was a learning process for me, fun, but also very daunting, very daunting, even down to the covers. I had a vision. That was the one thing I had in my head from day one. And I was hoping that they weren't going to obstruct my vision. Thankfully, they didn't. They just said, no, whatever you want goes. So I was lucky with that. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now you mentioned something, and there is 2 things I want to go to. You mentioned the word criticizing. Do people actually criticize you? Do they tell you? Do people actually come back to you? Because I'm not just talking about the first book, I'm talking about all the books you wrote. Are there people who come up to you and you say, hey, the thing that you wrote there, that's not true, or that's wrong, or has that happened?
They haven't. Listen, when I put my books out and the reviews were coming in, it's very important about reviews, especially where fiction is concerned. And they were coming back 4-star, 5-star, 4-star, and all really, really nice, sweet reviews. I even got messages from people via my social media saying how they much enjoyed it, that it resonated, different books resonate. So I had good reviews, and I was really pleased. But then I get the one review that says, now listen, I write romance. That's my genre. And this review said that my book was too romantic. So I kind of like thought, okay, what did you expect?
It's
It's
a
not a
romance.
thriller. It's a romance. And if it's too romantic, well, that's what it's all about. I write
Good, isn't it?
romance.
It should be.
Yeah.
It,
I
did it bother you though? Because this is an interesting human thing. We may get 100 good reviews and we are pleased with them, and then we get this one and we hang ourselves up on them, do
Well,
we?
listen to me now. I'm just talking about that one review.
Yes,
I didn't
yes,
mention all the ones that had said so many nice things. I
yeah,
can't even remember the nice things that they said. I just remember the one bad review that said it was too romantic. So, yes, I think it's human nature, isn't it? You don't like to feel that you've failed in any way.
yeah, of
Not that I
course.
feel like I failed, but I just felt like,
Yeah.
why did you have to say that? Just don't say it.
Totally unnecessary. Now,
Yeah.
let's go back a little bit about where you
Yes.
come from, and because you are actually quite an international girl, because I know your mom and your parents lived in Egypt. Where your
Yeah, that's right. They were born and brought up in Cairo. Yeah.
Yeah. So then they moved to England.
Yes, they did. They moved to England in I think it was 1960, 61. And it was May.
Everything happens in May.
Everything.
And then you were born in England.
That's correct. In the north of England, in Leeds.
Yeah. And then you met your husband and you moved to Cyprus, because it's interesting. I think that background alone makes you sort of a bit multicultural, even though you
Definitely.
weren't born in Egypt, but you are, but it gives you a different, I think it gives you a different idea, because in your books you do travel. And one thing that I want to know, I've always wanted to know from not how much do you research about traveling? How correct does it have to be in a romance? And
Okay. So,
if it's not correct, are people gonna, are they gonna complain?
okay. So thank goodness for Google.
Hey,
Everything in my book, any place, any street, any house I mention, describe, actually exists. The names might not be the same as in, the shop that I choose, but how I describe it, I've gone down in Google Earth and gone down that street and checked it out and seen that, yes, it had a fig tree there, so I will put it in. I am meticulous with my research because I love it. I love doing that because it's like traveling, it's traveling in your little
in your book,
office.
in your fantasy.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sitting in my office, I'm traveling and I'm describing certain things. And that for me is one of the best parts about writing.
Yeah. And
Um,
when you do that, let's say now you're in Italy and
yes.
you're looking for something and you find it, and then can that lead to something else? Can your
Yeah.
Googling actually lead to yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly
You
what
weren't
happens.
planning initially, maybe, but
No,
yeah,
that's it exactly. I decide on a place, for instance, catches my eye, and I go into it, and I look, and I go, oh, that's a nice restaurant. Okay, I can put that in there, and this, that, and it just, oh, look at this. Oh, there's a park further down here, and yes, it continues.
something
Um,
happened in the park.
yeah.
Amazing. No, it's fascinating. But, as you say, the hardest part is not writing the book. It's hard to write the book, but it's putting it out there. It's selling it, because even though we all, like, I wrote my book because I wanted to sort of make the world a little better. But of course, I want to sell my book. Of course, I want people to read my book, and marketing it, because just by finding a
Yeah.
publisher and printing a book, and it's not, there is no money coming in, and it takes a while, doesn't it? Now you actually wrote 7 books. That is a lot. Is it like, and I know that you're writing the next one.
That's right. Yeah.
um is it that once you've started you can't stop?
The hardest bit for me is first, I can't type very fast, which is a nightmare. So I end up scribbling things down in a notebook with pencil, always with pencil. once I start, I don't write in sequence, which is a little bit bizarre. I always write the first chapter and I know how it's going to end. So I almost write the last chapter. And then I write scenes in that happen in between that are very vivid to me. So I write those down and then I link them together. That means that I end up going backwards and forwards to each chapter to rewrite them because sometimes something else might transpire when I'm linking them together. But that's how I write. And it's strange that it happens that way because I'm quite an organized person. I like everything to fall into place. I'm a bit meticulous with that. But in my writing, I'm completely erratic. But I think that's the creative process that works for me. I need to get that scene down. I can always tweak it later, but I need to get that scene down. So that's how I do it. And yes, once it starts going, it then gets hard not to write all the time.
Mm-hmm. Does it relax you? Does it stress you? What does it make you feel?
Definitely relaxes me. It does not stress me at all because I do it because I love it. I really love doing it. So I feel no stress. The only time I get a little bit, not stress, is annoyed, is that I can't maybe get the words in the right order to make it sound correct, or make the plot gel in the right way. And that I get frustrated that I can't get it quite right. But then I sort of leave it for a bit, and then sometimes something will come to me later on. But that's the only thing that I would say annoys or frustrates me.
Are all your books available on Amazon?
They are in hardbacks and ebooks and paperbacks.
So for whoever is listening, all the books of Anna Maria Athanasiou are available on Amazon. We will put the link in the show notes. I think if you put one link, all the other books come
The
out.
other ones come up, yes. All the books
Yes,
come up.
yes, yes, we'll do that because they're good. They're good reads, especially now in the summer when you're on the beach. And not only in the summer, in the winter when it's horrible outside and it's nice to read about sun and about wine and whatever. No,
And
they're
food. You probably notice there's quite a lot of food
of
references
course
in
I
my
know
book.
about the food. Now, yeah, let's come back to Anna Maria a little bit. You trained in hospitality.
That's right. Yeah. Hotel catering and
And that
institutional management.
sticks. That sticks, doesn't it? Because you make
Yeah.
most amazing food and cakes.
Thank you.
So
That's another thing. I do that for pleasure now rather than, though one of my dreams is always to have my own restaurant. I always wanted my own restaurant.
do you still want that?
I don't know. No, I don't think I do now. Though having said that, if it turned up, I might think about it. Um,
So
but
we're
I ended
looking,
up writing about one in my books, so I kind of
yeah,
got
we're
my
looking for a
wish.
sponsor here, really, aren't you? Aren't we? If there was somebody available who would want to invest in a good restaurant run by a writer, maybe there's hope. Maybe there is a chance.
That's a niche there, niche market,
Yes.
if ever I heard
Yes,
one.
yes. And you do like to travel. You've just recently been to Italy with your sons, and that is a little bit sad. And I want to go into this sadness a little bit because one thing that your story has taught me and always teaches me when somebody has to go so young is not to postpone things because you were planning to travel with Marius, weren't you?
Yeah, we'd planned, it was supposed to be his 60th birthday on May the 2nd. And we'd planned that we were going to be away for it with the boys. But like you said, sadly, he left us last July. And obviously, things changed for us. But in January, I felt this birthday looming, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do about being here because I would have been on my own here
Yeah.
because my boys are in the UK. And I got in touch with them and I said, "What do you say we still go? Because I'm sure Dad would have wanted us to go."
Absolutely.
So they said, "Sure, where do you want to go?" We were initially going to go to Italy. We hadn't decided where. And we decided that we'd go to Rome. So we did. I met my boys in Rome. We had 5 fabulous days in Rome. It was fun. It was emotional. It was hard being there, but also so joyful. And he would have had a blast knowing we were having a blast because all we did was we laughed a lot and we cried a lot. So it was, yeah, emotional,
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of
so
wisdom
fun.
in here. There's a lot because there is so many things in life, like what I said before. We shouldn't postpone because we never
Mm.
know if tomorrow comes. That's one thing. But the other thing is all what that is also important, I think, is that when somebody goes, they want us to be happy. He wanted you to go to Rome and he wanted you to have
You
fun.
know, it's weird. I'm don't know how to say this without it sounding weird, but there was so many signs that kept saying to me, you need to go on this trip. And I don't know whether I was looking for them or they actually were signs, but it was bizarre. Just, everything was about Italy all of a sudden. And the 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 bottom line was I was talking to my cousin in America and how we got round to the conversation, it was a long-winded conversation, but he just turned around to us, you know what, I really want to go. I really want to go to Rome. And it was so out of the blue for him to say something like that. We weren't even talking about Italy. And he literally said, wouldn't you like to go to Rome? And I just went, oh my goodness me, that is bizarre. So I literally put down the phone to him, booked tickets. That was it.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes we think too much. We think
Yeah.
too much, we worry too much. It's this is so true. Now, coming back, this was very private, very personal, but coming back to the other part of traveling, let's talk about book tours.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
you've just been on one, and it will be interesting for people who are listening, who are again, maybe they have a book, maybe they don't have one yet, but they're planning to do one. How do you organize a book? Who organizes a book tour? How does
Well, I'm super, super lucky because I have got some amazing author friends. This specific book signing that I went to in my hometown of Leeds is organized by a wonderful woman named Sarah Michelle Lynch. And she's an author herself. But she and I met 2017 when I was promoting my first books, Waiting for Summer, and I saw about a book signing in my hometown, and I applied to go, and I was, a nobody. And there was some huge authors there, ones that I was a fan of. And to be honest, it was so daunting, and I was so excited to meet these authors that I'd read their work. And I managed to get in. I don't know how I managed to get in. I'll be honest with you, I really don't. But they said, yes, you come. So I think it was because I was from Leeds and also because I was living in Cyprus. It added that international thing to it. So I was lucky that they took a chance on me. And I met Sarah at this signing. We became such good friends, even though she lives in the UK and I live here, and we literally communicate via emails and social media and whatever. I went to a number of signings with her over the years, and then she decided to start doing her own events because she's just amazing at organizing. I mean, I have never seen such a class event. We had a huge hall in the Leeds Armories, which is that in itself is amazing, and we had 100 authors there, and so there's quite a lot of events that go around the world. We're even in talks about maybe doing one outside of the UK. I think that's the way it's going, but it's hard work because for me, I have to schlep all the way to the UK and I have to have books, I have to have signs, I have to have all my merchandise, and it's a big thing and tiring because it's 2 days and you're there from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock on form. But it's amazing. An
it's worth
amazing.
it. Yeah, yeah.
It's I mean, you're on pure adrenaline the whole time you're there. We had people coming from the United States. I had a woman this time, she had my 7 books and she dragged them all the way there for me to sign them. My kids were just looking like,
Really?
what? This woman's come all the way for you to sign the books. And I was like, I know, it's bizarre, isn't it? Your mom
I
is doing
know.
this.
Of course she would. You read a lot. How much do you read? Somebody who wants to write needs to read a lot, right?
Yeah. So I literally read between 3 to 4 books a week, and I listen to Audible or on Audible at least 2 books a month. That's at the moment.
When do you do that?
I do it very early in the morning. I don't sleep much.
Yeah,
That's
I
another.
know that.
Yeah. So like this morning I was awake at 4 o'clock. So I wake up, I had get my book, I read for an hour, and then I get up at 5 and whatever. So and I read to go to sleep as well. Though I have been known to start a book at 10 and it gets to 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm still reading it, but I have to put this book down because I've got to get up. Yeah.
Fascinating, because you're in a book club that has been on this podcast.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yes, that's been fun for me because I'm reading books I would never read. So I read the genre that I write because that's what I like, romance, that kind of thing. But that's opened up. I mean, I used to read a lot more when I was younger, different books, but now that's more than what I'm into, the romance. Now I'm reading autobiographies, spy thrillers, murder mysteries, some other books that I wouldn't even touch. They're not my thing, simply because I don't like things that make me sad. I know that sounds a bit
No,
like I'm
that is
cocooning
totally
myself,
fine.
but
Yeah.
I don't. I just, there's enough of that going around every day. So I'd rather read something that's why all my books have got happy endings. I don't like any books that don't have a happy ending.
No drama.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've been asked to read these books, and some of them I haven't liked at all, but I'm glad I read them. That's the great thing about a book club. It makes you read things you wouldn't normally read.
I
Um,
totally, because you have to read what they tell you.
exactly.
Do you tell them when you don't like it? Are you honest?
Yes, I'm very honest.
And what do they do? Do they get a, do they not like it?
It's not that they don't like it. They're sort of like, it's more like, why don't you like it? But it was so nice, especially whoever's chosen it,
Yeah, it's
and
funny,
I'll say,
isn't it?
yeah,
It's
yeah, it's
so
like,
funny because we humans are so weird. Like, it's like I wrote that. I only chose the book. I didn't write it, but you become very defensive when something.
yeah, it's true. And I like to explain why. For instance, I don't like the way this was put forward, or if I didn't like the way it was written, the style it was written, there's often that plays a big role for me. And I find it's weird because, especially being in the sort of world that I'm in, I read so, like I've told you, I read so many books, and most of them are not bestsellers. Most of them are very under the radar books. And then I'll read a bestseller in my book club, and I read it and I go, how is this a bestseller? And the one that I read 2 weeks ago that nobody knows about, I couldn't put it down. I read it in a day. And this one, it was like walking through treacle, to read it. So it's all down to taste. And I've
Absolutely.
always maintained that, it doesn't matter what you read, as long as you're reading something. It could be a very, what people class as a shallow book, or it could be a very highbrow, philosophy book. It doesn't matter. You're still reading, and you pick something up every time you pick a book up. You learn something, even if it's one thing. It's important, and I think it just opens your eyes a little bit more. That's why I was adamant that my children read. I feel like I was a bit of a dragon when it came to, oh, you must read, and they both do. They read a lot. The both of them do. So I'm really
Yeah,
pleased
I
about that.
think especially in today's world with all the social media and the internet, people don't read much anymore, and it's a real shame because there's a lot of good books out there, and we're already getting close to the end. So, my dear Anna Maria, what's in the pipeline? When is that eighth book going to come out?
Right. So I've literally just started it, as you well know. And normally it would take me at least a year and maybe a little bit more than a year to write. It might, I've been signed up for a new book signing in October 2025. So I want it ready for that. So it'll be like a launch beforehand, and then it will be my signing there. So that's the plan. I'm hoping that I sit down, put my fingers on those keys, and start writing as fast as I was before. But as you well know, I'm juggling a few things at the moment. But I will carve out time. I might have to stop reading as much and write more.
Yeah, well, it's good to have a target, isn't it? It's good to have a goal and to know that by then, because usually, I don't know what you are like, but when you're a little bit of the last minute person, you'll probably start writing when you know that you really, really have to.
But the other problem is that I have about another 3 books in my head, rattling around.
But that was my next question. Will you always write? Do you think you will just continue writing? Is that the thing?
Yeah, I have about at least another 4 books that I'm planning on writing, and I write notes on those as they come to me, so I don't forget, because my memory's not as good as it used to be. So I do write notes on those all the time. But once I start writing full on, they will be sort of shelved for a little bit until I know that one's done. But I always, as soon as I finish writing and I know my book is at the editor, I start immediately with my next book.
Yeah.
Because I'm already in that mode.
There's little drawers in your head,
Yes.
and you put stuff in each little drawer if you want to sort of explain this. And you and I are going to go on a trip one of these days. We don't know when yet, and we don't know where, but there's going to be another book in that trip, I promise.
Oh, 100%. That's going to be so much fun.
I think leaving it here, I think you gave a lot of information for people who may want to write. Just the last thing that I want to hear, should people write? Should everybody write a book? Is it stupid that everybody wants to write a book? What is your opinion on that?
My opinion is, if you want to write or you feel you have a book in you, you should write it. It doesn't matter if it never gets published. Just do it, because I wrote it and I didn't even think I was going to finish it. And I finished it, and then I got it published. And now my first 2 books were traditionally published. That was going on now, it's 11 years ago. And the book world has changed tremendously in the last 10 years, as you well know. And it's easier to get your work out there, but it's harder for you to get it seen. So for me, you should still do it. There's so many ways you can get your work out there. Some of the big best-selling authors just put their work out there and somebody picked it up and it became bestsellers, and there's other people that were banging on doors for 10 years and never got published until, very recently. So it's a lot is down to being at the right time, at the right place, and the right person picking it up. That's the most important thing. So just do it. The worst thing that can happen is you have a book at the end of it and you have it for yourself. You should always write for yourself anyway. I do. I write for me.
Beautiful.
And then
is this it? Is this a perfect ending to a perfect episode?
Thank you so much. That's so sweet.
Thank you. Thank you for being the most memorable journeys today, Maria Athanasiou. If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes.